Look, becoming healthier can be expensive. Right now in America, getting food that is better for you costs more, and it is such a barrier for lower income Americans that also have the worst health outcomes. So how are you planning to bring down the cost of being healthier in America?
Yeah, one thing Bobby Kennedy is not going to do is entertain comments from food industry lobbyists using food prices as an excuse to continue poisoning children. Like, that's not going to work. And I know a lot of you guys are doing that, and I think if you really back up, that's an evil argument. That's the only argument the food industry is making. Right now, they're trying to hold a gun on food prices to literally not even dispute the premise that Americans are being poisoned. We have 10,000 chemicals in our food that are not allowed in any other country. Fundamentally, American food companies make their food with different ingredients than other countries. I mean, the food dyes is obviously been a flashpoint. American companies are making their products here with crude oil-derived food dyes and making the exact same product shipped into Canada with beet juice and carrot juice. So I think when this starts, Bobby's going to, and Secretary Kennedy's going to first talk about transparency, and that's what he's done. He's talked about GRAS standards. Fundamentally, what he's asking for is we need to understand what's in our food. The FDA currently does not have a list of what's in our food. They do not have a list. It's self-policing. So he's going to work with the NIH, work with the FDA to have a list of what is in our food and have post-market review of those chemicals. There's a lot of lobbying to actually prevent even transparency about what's in their food. There's voracious lobbying from industry about preventing, oh, that's going to embarrass us. That's going to make us look bad. We, at the baseline, what Bobby Kennedy's saying on food is we need to know what's in it. We have to have accurate science on the chemicals in our food.
Life comes at you fast, right? Long ago, I used to not really believe in the organic stuff. I'm like, how bad can it be, right? And as a conservative, and I think this is one of the reasons why I'm a conservative and not a libertarian, even though I have a lot of like libertarian sentiments. Like I really do believe that, no government is better. It'll be for a better system. I do believe that some people can self-regulate, but I believe government is a necessary evil solely because it's meant to contain bad actors from corrupting or abusing the system in a way that's detrimental to the citizens that live in this country. And I think one of the biggest one of the biggest pro-regulation kind of stances that I have is the ability to regulate food companies, right? Because that can cause direct harm to the American populace. As you saw from the intro, this guy, Calley Means, but he highlights like some of the biggest problems that our food industry and food regulator have. You don't have a list of food that's a list of ingredients or what's being used in our food. Everything's self-policed by these food companies. Democrats will never allow that with other companies. Oh no, we have to know what you're making so we can tax you effectively. But food companies can put who knows what into our food and don't even have to tell us. And I think this interesting conversation between him and this journalist highlights the need for transparency, right? Because this is something that Americans are dying for right now, literally. It's because, we got concerns about vaccines. Not going to get into that because on YouTube, your ass going to get censored if you start talking about vaccines because they love their vaccines. Who organization, this authority, fallacy of authority. I don't care what the authority says. The authority can be wrong because reality is the true authority on what is actually effective and what is actually not. And for years, many people had concerns about red food dye. And recently, before Trump took office, they released science released and exposed the fact that yes, red food dyes does cause cancer or is linked or correlated with increased risk for cancer. And everyone's like, duh, we know this. And then RFK is taking that same level of skepticism on vaccine, but all of a sudden it's a problem. And before I go into this, all this stuff, all this defense from the medical community, all we see it as is some part of them in protecting their economic and self-interest. That's all it is.
Now it seems like the first priority has actually been to make a lot of cuts this week. There's news of massive cuts to HHS. At this point, about a quarter of HHS's 82,000 employees have left or are expected to be terminated. So just some of the changes here. You've laid off big chunks of offices in charge of vaccine and drug research, HIV/AIDS research, AI, funding for services for the elderly and low-income people, STD prevention, rural health, with very little lead time.
Right.
What do you say to people in the public who are concerned now about drug safety, about whether we're prepared for the next pandemic when these cuts have happened so hard, so fast?
Yeah, I'd say to the reporters in the room and the lobbyists in the room, I mean, obviously make your case, but I'd truly ask for, as you're making it, a little bit of humility about what the voters were trying to say by putting Bobby Kennedy Jr. in this position of power. I would a little bit of humility to ask why Bobby Kennedy, along with President Trump, are the two most popular political figures in America by far.
Because the American people have skepticism over the narrative that the medical community and these pharmaceutical companies and these food companies are actually putting. You told us food dye don't do this for 30 years. People were saying red food dye doesn't has no harmful side effects. Then in 2024, like the end of 2024, early 2025, a study comes out validating all the concerns that the conspiracy theorists had. And you don't think the same reality can play out with vaccines? The medical community has lost the trust of the American public. And the only way the American public will begin trusting the medical community is if the medical community makes steps in bringing transparency and actually resolving the concerns that American people have.
What the voters are trying to say, and I think they were right, is that the system is really on the wrong track. That the existing health authorities just demonstrably, the NIH oversaw, and this is just consensus at this point, the literal creation of a pandemic. The NIH, whose goal is to promote American health, has overseen a devastation, just an abject devastation in American health over the past 20 years, with disease rates skyrocketing in America, leading the world of almost every single chronic disease, with rates of nearly every single chronic disease being at an all-time high among kids.
Sorry, I keep pausing it, but I think this is an important point to highlight here, is that just like the Department of Education, right? When the Department of Education was created, we had before it was created, we had the #1 education system in the world. After it was created, our position in the education system globally declined. Even though we're spending more money on education, we got less quality outcomes from academia in our education system. That's not a good rating. Hey, it's like someone say, hey, look, I promoted you to a manager. Before you were promoted to a manager for this team was highly productive. After you became manager of this team, the productivity of this team went down. That's essentially what the Department of Education just did. This is essentially what the NIH just did. You're the NIH, but look at the results. We lead the world in chronic diseases? What? How is that possible? Adult obesity is at an all-time high. What? We're considered one of the most unhealthiest populations in the world, and NIH think they don't have to change? That don't make any sense to me, and this is why I said there's a conflict of interest. It's just we're not aware of it yet.
There's been very little innovation with small pharma, with innovative therapeutics at the FDA. It costs $1 billion to get through the process. CMS is an agency that's much larger budget than Defense Department, that's controlled by the American Medical Association, which is a pharmaceutical lobbying group and is almost predominantly sick care. So
this is why our healthcare is so expensive.
Controlled by the American Medical Association, which is a pharmaceutical lobbying group and is almost predominantly sick care. So there's real problems, and when you turn on CNBC, it's just a nonstop. It's a nonstop infomercial for pharma. It's a Sky Rizzy commercial followed by Scott Gottlieb saying how Bobby's killing people, followed by a breathless coverage of the measles outbreak and no mention of the mental health crisis.
How does cutting a bunch of HHS solve that problem?
It is insane. It is insane for you to insinuate that the thing standing between us and better health is more government bureaucrats. Like that's demonstrably
That's not what I'm insinuating.
That is what everyone's saying. It is absolutely insane to insinuate that it's some crime.
It's not all bureaucrats.
I mean, the problem that you just mentioned and say, hey, how can we handle all these things if we don't have these bureaucrats in these positions in power, right? And what he's trying to say is, no, we need to change the incentives. We need to change our habits. We need to change how we do things that will make us more resilient to that. Like, let's take COVID, for instance. I was young, healthy. I have no prior pre-existing conditions, right? And if let's say America only had a 10% obesity rate, I don't think COVID would be as much of a threat to our population as it was in 2020. Because of the fact that we have obesity is considered a chronic disease or a comorbidity. I think that's what they call it. that made you more at risk of dying of COVID. 46% of Americans were higher at risk of dying of COVID because of the fact that they were obese already. If that was a lower percentage, COVID would have been less of a threat. And I think he's making an argument that we need to change the system itself, and we can't change the system. Like, and any manager knows this. If you have a bad team, you coming in, you're a cleanup man. You're like, okay, I gotta find the good ones, and I gotta fire all the bad ones. And right now, they're just firing a lot of people because the system itself is not incentivized to give a good result. They've been managing a decline of health over decades. You think these same people will magically want to change because RFK's health secretary now? No. These people will become obstacles because they got to defend their what? Their livelihood, the status quo. And you don't change status quo by allowing the same people to reside in the system. You have to make some cuts. You have to make some eliminations to create a path forward. And I think I agree with some of the cuts, but my argument is wait and see. I want to see how this play out because this is our first attempt at doing something about the healthcare crisis that we have. And having these people in these positions will make it harder for change to happen in the health system.
It's a lot of scientists, it's researchers, it's people who are making sure that
those scientists fundamentally have overseen, just demonstrably, a record of utter failure. It would be insane. Is that funny? Is that not true? I'd love to hear how. So what metrics would you guys point to for how the scientific community, how the 4 times more per capita on
this is where they get destroyed, guys. I'm sorry. This is where they get destroyed. Just like in education, when people come out here, oh, that's not true. Education, okay, name me a metric and where the Department of Education improved our education system, has given us a positive outcome. Crickets. He's going to make the same argument here with healthcare.
On healthcare spending that we spend in America versus other countries has produced innovation. Has there been one single chronic disease medication in modern American history that has lowered rates of the chronic disease? It is appropriate that the American Academy of Pediatrics right now, which is 90% funded by pharma, is pushing Ozempic on 6-year-olds.
So Calley,
that is what the medical authorities are doing.
Why not then use the power that you guys have to push the existing infrastructure in that direction instead of slashing it altogether?
You're going to get resistance. It's just like what my example said. You have a team of unproductive people. As a manager, you go in and you say, okay, I got to find who's holding it back. What's still salvageable, what's not salvageable. And most of the time, you're cutting a lot of those people, like 70% of those people out of the team. And you're going to bring in new blood, new fresh faces to create a new culture, a new incentive. These people will act as a resistance to your, like, what she's arguing for will waste the 4 years of RFK. And they know that. Oh, why not just try to work within? No, that's one reason why working within doesn't usually work. No, you gotta remove these people out of power and bring in new people who are willing to challenge status quo.
It's not slashing. It's taking it back to 2017 levels. That's not slashing. The amount of bureaucrats.
It's more like 2002 levels, actually.
In many cases, it's actually just not that much. But it is cutting. What is it? 20,000 people? It's taking it back to. It's taking the HHS back to 68,000 employees. It is absolutely like the idea that Bobby Kennedy should not come in and make dramatic changes to the leadership and the personnel at these authorities that have overseen an abject devastation of American health, which the lobbyists in this room do not have the humility to admit that we have gone completely wrong. The lobbyists in this room laughing when we have the sickest children in the developed world. If that is your attitude, and your attitude is to tell the Maha moms that their votes and their voice is not legitimate, that we need dramatic changes to American healthcare, if you think it is illegitimate for Bobby Kennedy to not make big changes to people like Peter Marks, who once again and again went against FDA advisory opinions, who fired the 2 top vaccine makers, the 2 top vaccine scientists at the FDA for suggesting that we shouldn't mandate COVID shots for soldiers, who continually went against expert opinion in favor of the pharmaceutical industry, who many people here were collaborating with him with. The fact that somebody like that can't be fired and he can't install tremendous people like Marty McCary and Jay Bhattacharya and Dr. Oz to start reforming these agencies and put in their people, of course he should do that. That's what people voted for.
Insanity. These people, they really wanted to, like, that's what I'm saying. Show me the incentive and I'll show you the outcome. And we see the outcomes. these people benefit, these pharmaceutical companies benefit, these big pharma people, these big food people benefit, giving us cheaper food, but your cheap food or your ingredients you're using is hurting the health of America. Big pharma comes in, here's a quick fix, and you benefit from Americans when they're sick. That's the incentive structure of the current system. And then you go, that's not true in the crowd. Faceless lobbyists, faceless pharmaceutical lobbyist says that's not true. Then the person asks, give me a metric where you have positively impacted the health of the American public. Crickets. It's just like the COVID stuff. Natural immunity doesn't work on COVID. What? That goes against previous historical patterns. No. Listen to the experts. Then you find out years later, yeah, natural immunity is actually a better resistant to COVID than getting the vaccine. We knew this already, but these experts are using and abusing their authority. And this is why the fallacy of authority is a thing. Just because someone in authority says something is true does not necessarily make it true. And this is what's going on right now. No one should question the experts, but science is all about questioning previous predetermined perception. Science is a process of doubt. What makes you a good scientist is you doubt things. And the funny part is, with all these bad outcomes, it's so funny how these same lobbyists or these people who goes to these healthcare summits don't even doubt, okay, what we're doing is right. Look what the American people just did. They just elected someone that we thought was anti-science, anti-this, anti-that. Why did American people vote for him? Why did American people align themselves with him? Because they don't trust us. Why they don't trust us? Oh, well, we're not as transparent as we could be. We kind of dismiss the American public's concerns when it comes to our products because we think they're being hyperbolic. We don't make any steps to actually assuage those concerns. And this is what you get. Arrogance. And I like he called them out. You guys are not humble. You know what they say, the pride goeth before the fall, and this is the medical institutions at its finest. These snooty, condescending people, typically liberal, pretending they know what's best for you. And all in the background benefiting off of the sickness and the decline of the American people. And then when American people push back, they're here screaming, they're here laughing about it in a room. Not a good look for the medical association, and thank God that Bobby Kennedy's in there. And I hope he has some lasting change that's felt in generations. But I digress. Let me know your thoughts and perspective in the comment section below. Hopefully YouTube don't ban this video, but if they do, you can watch it on Rumble. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I would like to hear your thoughts and your perspective on this. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Appreciate you guys watching to the end of the video. Please share this video if you feel so inclined. It really does help me out in the algorithm, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.